In the late 1990s, the NFL decided it had an answer for why one of college football's most explosive quarterbacks failed at the next level. They didn't say it on draft night, they didn't put it in headlines, but the message spread anyway. For Akili Smith, the explanation wasn't mechanics, it wasn't patience, it wasn't a broken franchise or a rushed development plan, it was intelligence. He couldn't grasp the playbook, he wasn't diligent enough, he just didn't have it mentally. Those phrases followed him from Cincinnati to the bench, then out of the league entirely. And once that label stuck, no stat, no context, and no second chance could undo it. But here's the question the NFL never really answered. Was Akili Smith a failed quarterback, or was he failed by the system that drafted him? Before we break down the decisions, the numbers, and the narrative that ended his career, take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you think the NFL has always judged black quarterbacks by a different standard. Now let's get into it. Before the NFL ever questioned his intelligence, Akili Smith made scouts believe in something else entirely: upside. In 1998, Smith wasn't just good at Oregon, he was explosive. In a single season as the Ducks starter, he threw 32 touchdown passes, led the entire nation in yards per attempt, and turned a Pac-10 offense into one of the most feared units in college football. His arm strength stretched defenses vertically, his mobility punished hesitation, and his calm under pressure made difficult throws look routine. This wasn't backyard football. Oregon's offense required timing, reads, and anticipation. Smith routinely worked through progressions, attacked coverage seams, and punished blitz in sub 4.7 speed. Smith looked like the prototype for where the quarterback position was heading. He wasn't just athletic, he was efficient, and efficiency is supposed to translate. That's why his rise was so fast. One elite season was all it took for Smith to go from unknown to third overall pick in the 1999 NFL Draft. He wasn't drafted on hope alone, he was drafted on production. The Bengals believed so strongly in what they saw that they turned down a historic trade offer from New Orleans, choosing Smith over 9 draft picks in a faster rebuild. That decision didn't happen by accident. It happened because the league believed Smith was worth building around, worth waiting for, worth developing. And for a brief moment, everyone agreed, which makes what came next even more important. Because when the development stalled, the league didn't question the gamble, it questioned the quarterback. Draft night wasn't just about selecting a quarterback. For the Cincinnati Bengals, it was about staking the future of the franchise on a single decision, and on Akili Smith. In the weeks leading up to the 1999 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints, led by head coach Mike Ditka, were desperate. They wanted running back Ricky Williams so badly that they made one of the most aggressive trade offers in league history: 9 draft picks spread across multiple years in exchange for Cincinnati's number 3 pick. It was the kind of haul that could rebuild a broken roster overnight. The Bengals said no. They didn't hesitate, they didn't counter, they stayed put, because they believed Smith was the answer: a franchise quarterback, the reset button. That decision instantly changed the stakes around him. Smith wasn't just walking into a normal rookie situation. He was walking into the shadow of what the Bengals had just turned down. Every throw, every mistake, every delay in development would now be measured not just against other quarterbacks, but against 9 missing draft picks. And Cincinnati wasn't a patient organization. This was a franchise cycling through coaches, coordinators, and quarterbacks with alarming speed. The roster around Smith was thin. The infrastructure to develop a raw quarterback simply wasn't there. But because of the gamble they'd made, the Bengals couldn't afford to admit uncertainty. So instead of easing Smith in, the pressure accelerated. Instead of insulating him, expectations piled up. He was expected to justify the pick quickly, to prove that passing on the biggest trade offer in draft history wasn't a mistake. When the wins didn't come, the narrative had to change. It couldn't be the front office, it couldn't be the roster, and it couldn't be the decision itself. Because admitting that would mean admitting the gamble failed. So the focus shifted, away from the bet and toward the quarterback who carried it. By the time Akili Smith took control of the Bengals' offense, the concerns were no longer just about performance, they were about preparation. Smith didn't just miss time early because of contract disputes. He struggled to establish the daily habits required to survive as an NFL quarterback. Coaches questioned his film study. Teammates noticed inconsistencies. And behind the scenes, Cincinnati grew increasingly frustrated with what they saw as a lack of urgency in mastering the playbook. This wasn't speculation. His own offensive coordinator later admitted that Smith wasn't as diligent as he should have been when it came to studying tape and learning the system. The Bengals' offense was complex, terminology heavy, and unforgiving, and Smith never fully caught up. The playbook became the dividing line. Missed reads weren't viewed as rookie mistakes, they were framed as mental lapses. Delays at the line of scrimmage weren't chalked up to inexperience. They were treated as proof that he didn't understand what he was seeing. And unlike other quarterbacks who struggled early, Smith didn't earn the benefit of repetition. Each mistake reduced his margin for error. Each benching made it harder to learn. Each new coordinator changed the language again. Off the field, the structure wasn't there to compensate. Smith didn't respond well to the pressure, the scrutiny, or the sudden wealth. He wasn't insulated, he was guided. He was expected to adjust immediately to the most demanding positions in sports. And when he didn't, the organization didn't pivot to development, they pivoted to conclusion. The Bengals didn't just decide Smith couldn't run their offense, they decided he never would. And once that decision was made, every struggle reinforced the same belief that this wasn't a quarterback who needed time, it was one who didn't belong. By the time the league had made up its mind about Akili Smith, the numbers were already locked in, and they told a story that was easy to repeat but rarely explained. 5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, a passer rater hovering just above 50. Those stats became the shorthand for Smith's career. Proof, many said, that the Bengals were right. Proof that the label fit. Proof that the experiment failed. What almost never came with those numbers was context. Smith played in an environment where stability barely existed. During his 4 seasons in Cincinnati, the Bengals cycled through coaching voices, offensive philosophies, and personnel groupings. The offensive line changed constantly, receivers rotated, protections broke down, and the quarterback room never settled. For young quarterbacks, repetition is everything, the father of learning. Smith never had it. He started only 17 games across 4 seasons, fewer than a single full season's workload. Many of those starts came in short bursts, often followed by benchings that reset progress instead of building on it. Learning an NFL offense requires continuity. Smith's reality was interruption, and yet, when his passer rating dropped, the explanation didn't center on chaos. It centered on capability. Quarterbacks in broken systems often produce broken stats. That's not opinion, it's pattern. When protection collapses, reads speed up. When play callers change, confidence erodes. When mistakes are punished immediately, decision making tightens. But instead of seeing Smith's numbers as evidence of organizational failure, they were used as confirmation of a personal one. These statistics stopped being descriptive and became declarative. This is when the narrative fully hardened. Smith's struggles were no longer framed as what happened, they were framed as who he was. And once the numbers were interpreted that way, there was no room left for development, recalibration, or patience. The league didn't ask why the stats looked the way they did, it decided what they meant and moved on. By the end of his time in Cincinnati, Akili Smith wasn't being evaluated as a developing quarterback anymore. He was being measured against a reputation that had already calcified. Statistically, the resume looked damning on the surface. 17 starts, 2,212 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Numbers that have been replayed for 2 decades as proof that the Bengals were right to move on. But the numbers also hide how fragmented his opportunities really were. Smith never started more than 11 games in a single season, never played behind a stable offensive line, never finished consecutive seasons in the same offensive structure. From '99 to 2002, Cincinnati shuffled quarterbacks, coordinators, and personnel while expecting immediate results from a player who missed key developmental time and struggled to master a complex system. Once the organization concluded Smith couldn't handle the playbook, the leash vanished. After his release in 2003, Smith received only brief tryouts, not investments. He never started another NFL game. His final professional stat line became permanent, not because improvement was impossible, but because the league never allowed enough repetition for it to occur. Yet, here's the contradiction rarely discussed. Smith remained in football. He became a quarterback's coach, a graduate assistant at the college level. Someone trusted to teach route concepts, protections, and decision making, the very areas the NFL claimed were his shortcomings. The league remembered the stats, it ignored the context. And once a quarterback is labeled as a mental failure, the NFL doesn't revisit the evidence. It files the case away, even if the same player later proves capable of teaching the position at a high level. Smith's career didn't end because he couldn't throw, it ended because the league stopped believing he could grow. Long after the NFL stopped believing in Akili Smith, football never stopped believing in him. Away from the spotlight, Smith rebuilt his relationship with the game, not as a savior or a star, but as a teacher. He taught quarterbacks, he worked with offenses, and quietly, the most powerful rebuttal to the label followed. His son, Akili Smith Jr., grew up around the game, around film rooms, practice fields, and lessons that went far beyond arm strength. By the time he emerged as one of the top quarterback recruits in the country, the praise centered on things his father was once accused of lacking: intelligence, leadership, preparation, and mental growth. Smith Jr. chose to play for the Oregon Ducks, the same program where his father's rise began more than 2 decades earlier, not as a shadow, but as a continuation, a chance to write the next chapter of a family story the NFL thought it had already finished. Coaches talk about his command, his composure, his ability to handle pressure. Teammates talk about his presence, his work ethic, his voice in the huddle. And maybe that's the point, because what followed Akili Smith out of the NFL was never the full truth. It was a simplified version that made people comfortable. Comfortable blaming a player instead of a process. Comfortable turning complexity into character flaws. But legacies don't belong to leagues, they belong to families. And while the NFL moved on from Akili Smith years ago, the game itself never did. It simply waited, long enough for the next generation to remind everyone that labels don't define intelligence. The NFL decided what Akili Smith was long before it decided how long to wait. And now, as Akili Smith Jr. starts his journey for the Oregon Ducks, that old label doesn't look so permanent. Like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more NFL stories that they never tell. Because this is Old School Sundays, where the truth is uncovered.